Well, my name is Gene Hancock, and I was raised in Missouri, in Stone County, and it's known as southwestern Missouri. And most people that might recognize the area is where Branson is located. I was born in Cassville, Missouri, and shortly thereafter, my parents moved to Galena, Missouri, on a farm that my grandfather used to own, but my father and mother bought the farm. And I was raised on 200 acres. I was the third child out of 10 children. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages of having so many children in your family. I'll tell you the one big one, that no one ever has you over for dinner, I can assure you. You never go out to dinner, and you also can't all go in a vehicle at the same time. So those are the disadvantages, but the advantages far outweigh that. We had our built-in basketball team, baseball team, and we also had missions or jobs that we had to do on the farm every day. They were called chores. Before I go any further about my life, I would like to share a few thoughts and background of my parents. My father was William B. Benjamin Hancock. My mother was Minnie Lorraine Hancock, and I'd probably get my mouth washed out with lye soap right now using the word Minnie, because she hated that word, because there was a lady named Minnie Pearl that was always walking around with a hat with the price sticker still on it, and Mom didn't think that represented the name Minnie very well, so she always used the name Lorraine, and we never knew that Lorraine wasn't her first name. But Mom was from a family, her last name was Wiley, and she was from a family of 4 girls, and Dad was from a family of, I think, 5 children. And his father was a school teacher, as well as my mother's father, those my grandfathers. And then my grandfather on my father's side went into politics, and he ended up becoming a state representative, but he also had a lot of elected offices in Stone County. During the Depression, my father was at Searcy College in Arkansas. And the Depression came along, and Grandfather was about to lose the farm. So the boys got together and said, we can't lose the farm. It's the farm, we want to stay in the family name. So Dad dropped out of college and got a job working for the Trailways bus line in Springfield, Missouri. And his brother Kim worked for International Harvester. He was the accountant there. And I was told that they, instead of renting a 3-bedroom house, they went down to a 2-bedroom house, and the boys gave up all their music lessons, and everyone tried to save the farm. So it was a tough period of life in there. My mother and my father met at a Church of Christ in Shoalton. That was about probably 7 or 8 miles from where we lived. And I guess after services on a Sunday night, Dad would walk Lorraine home, holding her hand, and the parents would be riding in front of them with a horse-drawn buggy. And some way romance came out. But in those days, children got married really late in life, because with the Depression going on, you really couldn't provide a living or a home for a family. So they got married, I think, maybe 27, 28, because I know my mom was 30 when I was born, which was much different than my age group when we got married. However, I think today the children are waiting much longer to get married. I remember as a young boy, we had 25 cows to milk twice a day before we went to school. And you might think, would you really have to do that kind of work before you go to school? Well, when you live on a farm, the answer is yes. But when electricity came in, it just changed everything on our operations on the farm. Up until then, we also just had horses that we used for plowing the fields and doing all the necessary things. And Dad also got a new tractor, International Harvester. And that was, I think, one of Dad's happiest moments. But back to electricity. Once we got electricity, then we could buy milkers for the cows instead of milking them by hand. And then all of a sudden our herd went up to 50 cows because we could milk them much easier and much faster. And then we had a tractor and we could do more farming. And with electricity, we also dug a well, and the well then gave us the opportunity to go into the chicken market. And so we ended up building chicken houses, and we had a well, and we could provide water for them, and that you didn't have to bring the water up from any place else for the cows. So this electricity was just changed everything in our life as a kid growing up. You wouldn't think it today because everyone can go in a house and flip a switch and you've got light. But at night you had to go to bed as soon as the sun went down. There was one coal oil lantern we had, but seems like Mom always got the preference on that because she had someone that needed help with schoolwork. We went to a one-room schoolhouse when we started, and there were seats, so the first graders sat up closest to the teacher, and the eighth graders sat at the back of the room. So we know we used to have at least 8 pews, but this one-room schoolhouse was also used as the community church also. And the church that we went to the services were held there, and it was called Mountain Home Church of Christ, and the slang for that was Possum Trot. So you might wonder, who was my teacher in this? It was my first cousin, Violet Hancock. She was my teacher, and no one had to have a college education. All you had to do after you graduated from high school was to become a full-fledged certified teacher. As it would be today, you had to have over 10 years, you had to get in 60 hours of college. So everyone, and my brother Lee's first grade teacher was his aunt. And so the education probably wouldn't be up to today's standards, but it worked for us as a farmer. The schools were consolidated, so we went from a one-room schoolhouse at some time in my elementary school to Galena Grade School and Galena High School. And I don't have much of a memory about my elementary school being at a big school, and some of the kids lived in town, but they always wanted to come home with me because of my mother, I think. So it seems like we always had 10 kids around, but we probably had another 10 kids. Everyone loved my mom. They loved her cooking. And it was just a fun environment to grow up in.